Hi, I'm Raylyn Worcester, and this is Spreading the Word. That's word with a capital W, as in the written word, the Bible, and the Word made flesh, Jesus Christ. Today I'm going to be reading to you part 7 of And Then the Trumpet, the exciting sequel to Without Faith. When we left off, Christian and Sam had made their candidacy, or rather, their being elected president and vice president public on Now News New America. And Bridget is making arrangements to sell her coffee shop. And this is where we are going to pick up in part 7 of And Then the Trumpet. In Indiana, Gloria and Imelda had experienced the same wave of nostalgia that overwhelmed Christian and Bridget when they entered the secret room for the last time. As they entered Lawrence Township, Gloria sucked in a quick breath, taken aback by the beauty of the verdant valley, the lush landscape. She vividly remembered thinking that nothing evil could lurk in such beautiful surroundings. How wrong she had been. As they pulled up to the property gate at the cottage, her fingers burned as they keyed in the 3 6s into the keypad to unlock the gate. Changing that code would be the first on her to-do list, she silently vowed. She anticipated having to punch in the hated code again to open the front door, but surprisingly, the knob turned easily in her hand and the door swung open. "Gloria!" Dylan greeted as they entered the living room. "Dylan, I'm sorry, I'd forgotten you were here. So good to see you again," Gloria said as she crossed the room to give him a hug. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed him until this moment, how much she missed this cottage until she walked through the door. Imelda had stood quiet as a church mouse ever since entering the cottage, her tiny body shielded from Dylan's view by Gloria until she moved to hug Dylan. "And you must be Imelda," he said, walking over to shake the woman's hand. "Si, senor." While Dylan carried in the women's bags, Gloria made a beeline for the bathroom. She'd been too eager to arrive to make any unnecessary stops along the way. Imelda just wandered from room to room in a kind of daze. While everything seemed familiar to Gloria, everything about the cottage felt different to Imelda. Imelda had worked for 6 years in this cottage as the general's housekeeper. She spent as much time here or more than in her own home during that time. Her first instinct upon walking through the door today was to run into the pantry and put on the apron hanging inside the door. She had to remind herself that she was no longer a housekeeper. Then what am I? She wondered. She'd always had a sense of purpose, knew that God had a plan for her life. For 6 years she labored here knowing she was biding her time until God would use her mightily. And he had at Camp Bouse. She went from keeper of the house to encourager of the saints. Both were important jobs. Now she was nothing important. Numbly, she walked to the sofa and sat. Gloria exited the bathroom and sat by her friend on the sofa. Dylan walked out of the kitchen carrying a tray. "I put on some tea for you and made some sandwiches. I thought you might be hungry after your trip. Nothing fancy." Gloria was saying, "How thoughtful." At the same moment, Imelda was thinking, "But that's my job." The small Hispanic woman shook her head to dislodge the thought and replied, "Gracias, Senor Dylan." "Just Dylan," he said, handing her a cup. Gloria looked around as she selected a sandwich from the tray. "The place looks great, Dylan. Thank you for coming to open the house and make it ready for us. I'm sure there was a layer of dust a foot thick when you arrived." "I know there was." I still see some of it on the fireplace mantel. He obviously just wiped around objects instead of moving them, Imelda thought uncharitably. Are you all right, Imelda? Gloria asked her, seeing the frown. Just tired from the trip, she said. Gloria nodded. It had been a long trip, and she was sure Imelda was as overwhelmed emotionally upon her return to the cottage as Gloria was. I've rented a condo in Indianapolis. I made so much money working as your assistant with no time to spend it that I still had plenty on my freedom card. I think I'll go home now and leave you girls to settle in. Call me if you need me, okay? Thanks, Dylan. Come by for dinner tomorrow, say around 5 p.m., Gloria invited. Sounds good, he replied. Nice to meet you, Imelda. You too, Senor Dylan. As Dylan left, Imelda stood to take the tray into the kitchen. Gloria grabbed her arm. No, Imelda, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't work here, you live here. Allow me. Gloria took the tray from Imelda's hands and walked into the kitchen. Imelda heard her running water in the sink and humming, like Imelda used to do. Imelda just sat on the sofa with nothing to do, completely useless. Returning from the kitchen wearing Imelda's apron, Gloria saw her friend sitting on the sofa, staring off into space. She really must be tired, Gloria thought. Why don't you take the bed in the bedroom, Imelda? I'll make up the couch for myself tonight. Oh, no, that's all right, Imelda replied. This is a one-bedroom cottage, and that room is yours. I will be quite comfortable on the couch. I've slept in much worse places, as you are aware. Okay, if you're sure. I don't mind. I'm sure, Imelda said with a nod. Gloria removed the apron and laid it across the chair. Okay, then, I'll turn in too and see you in the morning. Good night, Imelda, and welcome home. Good night, Gloria, Imelda replied as Gloria walked down the hall to her room. Imelda walked to the linen closet and grabbed sheets, blankets, and a pillow. Making up the couch felt good, normal. Imelda started to relax. Then she saw the offending apron laid haphazardly across the chair. Everything in her wanted to go put it away. She turned her back upon it and climbed beneath the crisp, cool sheets. A tear escaped her eye. She thought, what the heck? She got up, snatched the apron from the chair, and headed to the pantry. Lying back down, Imelda was finally able to sleep. Imelda woke far earlier than Gloria the next morning. She folded the sheets and blankets and put them back in the linen closet until she needed them again. It was just barely light out, but there were birds chirping in the garden as Imelda stepped out onto the patio from the kitchen. Dylan had cleaned well enough, she conceded, but he hadn't put flowers in the vases on the island or in the bathroom. She'd go cut some now. As she walked through the garden, she noticed the weeds. Once Imelda was arrested and put on a train for Arizona, the general lost all interest in the cottage. He neglected to pay the mortgage or the weekly gardener who had gotten fed up and quit. At least Dylan watered the roses, Imelda thought, as she cut the fragrant blooms and carried them inside. She was being too hard on Dylan, Imelda realized. He had opened the house as a favor to Gloria. Undoing months of neglect was not his job. Dylan was coming for dinner tonight. She would make an authentic Mexican feast as a thank you. Gloria felt lighter with a purpose and a plan. First, she'd make herself and Gloria some breakfast. As she opened the refrigerator, she realized that Dylan had done some shopping. She had all the ingredients for French toast with homemade whipped cream and maple pecan syrup. She would go to the store in Indianapolis later and get the things she needed for dinner. Breaking eggs into a bowl, adding cinnamon and heavy cream, Imelda began to sing softly. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. Gloria stretched lazily and yawned. She didn't know if it was the delicious smells emanating from the kitchen or the sweet angelic voice she heard that woke her, but both felt like home. Imelda had been trained by Chef Francois and had made Gloria some delectable food while Gloria was stationed at Fort Benjamin Harrison. She had been singing the old rugged cross the day Gloria met her. Gloria lay in bed a moment reflecting on her relationship with Imelda and how it had evolved and changed over the past year. As precious as Imelda was to her, she knew the woman deserved better than a spot on her couch. She needed a place of her own. Gloria would have to give that some thought. But first, breakfast. Good morning, Gloria, Imelda said as Gloria entered the kitchen. Breakfast nook or patio? Oh, patio, please. I don't care if it's chilly. I love eating in the garden. Gloria held the door open while Imelda carried a plate stacked with French toast and a carafe of warm homemade syrup to the patio table. Can I help? Gloria asked. Grab the coffee while I get the whipped cream if you don't mind, Imelda replied. Gloria complied, bringing plates, silverware, and napkins too. The women held hands and blessed their meal as they had done over the very first meal they shared in this place. The moment felt right to both of them. Delicious, Gloria exclaimed around a mouthful of French toast. A little drop of syrup ran down her chin. She giggled in delight as she wiped it away with her napkin. This poor, neglected garden, Gloria remarked, looking around as she ate. Yeah, I guess the gardener has been gone a while, Imelda said wistfully. I've always loved puttering in a garden, Gloria said. Haven't had the opportunity in years. Maybe I'll do some weeding today. Have you thought about what you'd like to do? Actually, I have, Imelda responded. I'd like to go into Indianapolis and get some things to make an authentic Mexican feast for you and Dylan tonight. That sounds great, Gloria exclaimed. You can take my car. Would you mind trying to find some writing paper for me while you are out? I want to write to the general. He's allowed to receive mail at ADX? Imelda asked, surprised. Not for the first year, Gloria explained, but they said they would hold all the letters for him and give them to him when he's allowed. I intend to write him once a week. I want him to know he's not alone and forgotten in that place. The women finished their breakfast in silence, just enjoying the peace of the garden and each other's company. They cleared and did the dishes together, then each went about their plans for the day. Gloria heard the crunch of tires backing out of the driveway as she donned an old sweatshirt, pair of jeans, and sneakers. She gathered her curls in her hand and stuffed them through the opening in the back of a baseball cap, making a ponytail of sorts. Now that she was no longer in a professional capacity, Gloria rarely straightened her hair into the sleek bob she wore while representing the general. She found she actually preferred the bouncy curls that came to her naturally. She'd seen a pair of gardening gloves in the pantry when she retrieved the apron last night. She gathered them and a large black trash bag for weeds and headed out the patio door. It was a 20-minute drive to Indianapolis from Lawrence Township, but with no traffic on the road, Imelda made it in 15. Gloria had chosen a nice car, Imelda thought, similar to the staff car owned by the general. Imelda knew how to drive. She just preferred not to, so she declined when Gloria offered to buy her a car. She wouldn't mind driving at all if the streets were always this empty, she thought ruefully, but she knew cars were going to be legal again and traffic would be unbearable again soon. She pulled into the empty parking lot of the Fresh Market on College Avenue. She parked near the door and walked into a deceptively bustling market. The other patrons had walked or ridden bikes. Gloria had given Imelda her freedom card for this shopping trip. It still, for a short time, held unlimited credits. That's what prompted Imelda to choose the Fresh Market instead of the Kroger where she had always shopped before. The Fresh Market had an ethnic section with fresh ingredients from many different cultures. She would be able to get all the ingredients she needed for her chicken mole, pozole, and elote here. She grabbed a cart and began walking up and down the aisles. Imelda stood on tiptoes, stretching as far as she could, and the jar of chipotle and adobo sauce was still inches from her fingertips. Why would they put that on the top shelf? She thought with frustration. Allow me, a deep voice behind her said, as long arms reached above her head to retrieve the jar. Imelda turned to thank the man and claim her sauce when she looked up into the eyes of her guardian angel. Imelda, is that you? A stunned Jeb asked. The last time he'd seen Imelda, he'd lifted her into a cattle car headed for the guillotines at Camp Bouse. He believed he would never see her again. Yet here she was, standing in his favorite grocery store. Imelda was just as shocked to see Jeb. This man, who drove the train taking her to the processing center, had taken her from the cattle car, put her in his own room, shared his food with her, and had shown her kindness like she'd never known. She hadn't even been sure he was real. He had seemed like an angel sent from God to help her at the time. Yet here he was, towering above her, a jar of sauce in his hand. But how? I thought you were dead, Jeb stammered, still unable to believe his eyes. He'd never seen anyone so beautiful in his life. And I didn't think you were real, she said, drinking in the sight of him. I'm living in Lawrence Township now, Imelda said. Would you like to join us for dinner tonight and catch up? Us? Jeb asked. Was there a Mr. Imelda? I live with Gloria Vincent in the General's old cottage. Jeb knew Gloria. She had been the General's personal liaison when he'd met her, and she'd been a little snooty, as he recalled. Uncle Sam had told him that at the time Gloria had been working undercover for the resistance. He bet she and Imelda had some interesting stories to tell. I'd love to come, he answered, handing her the sauce he was still holding. What time? About 5. Do you know where to go? I'll find it, he said. He gave her a brief, awkward hug and walked away, grinning as he went. Imelda was smiling too, and suddenly she knew what she would make for dessert. She continued her shopping with a spring in her step, eagerly anticipating tonight's dinner. Gloria wiped the sweat from her brow. She put the last of the weeds in the plastic bag, stood and stretched her back. With the tall weeds gone, Gloria noticed something she hadn't before. There was a small building at the far edge of the garden. That must be the gardener's shack, she realized. She had never ventured this far into the garden before. It wasn't her place at the time, and she'd mostly been there to sleep. Now she would do some exploring. The door was unlocked, but stuck a little bit. She exerted a little extra force and stumbled in as it suddenly gave way. The shack had 2 rooms and a bathroom. The front room had a twin bed, a rocking chair, a lamp on a wooden end table, and a small TV. A kitchenette with sink, refrigerator, and stove. The room in the back held gardening tools. Except for the dust everywhere, it seemed pretty clean. There was one grimy window in the front room. Cleaned up with new curtains, this could be a cute little apartment, Gloria realized. Perfect for Imelda. The Spirit of God spoke to her soul. Gloria glanced at her phone. Imelda would still be gone for another hour or two, she thought. Excited, Gloria ran back to the cottage to throw away the weeds and grab a bucket of soapy water. 90 minutes later, Gloria heard the crunch of tires on the drive and ran out to greet Imelda. Imelda, seeing her, climbed out of the car and ran around the front of the vehicle to meet her. "Guess what?" they both said in unison. They stopped for a moment, then, "What?" they both said together again. When they quit laughing, Imelda said, "You first." "I found you an apartment." "Now you," Gloria said. "I invited a man over for dinner." She said, "Really?" they both said at the same time. They embraced and jumped up and down together like a couple of teenage girls. When they pulled apart, Gloria helped Imelda bring in the groceries. "I got your paper," Imelda said. "Thanks," Gloria replied. "Tell me about this apartment," Imelda requested. "Come with me, I'll show you." She led Imelda through the garden to the gardener's shack. "It needs a coat of paint," Gloria started. She turned the knob and the door opened easily. Gloria had found WD-40 in the room with the gardening tools and oiled the hinges. They walked in and Imelda looked around. The shack looked nothing like it had a couple of hours ago. The floors were swept and mopped, all surfaces free of dust. There was a fresh, clean bedding on the bed and the windows sparkled. "I figure with new curtains," Gloria started again as Imelda walked into the second room. Gloria had removed the tools and scrubbed the floor, and now it was just a blank canvas waiting to be used. "And you can turn this into a bedroom or a craft room or whatever you like." Gloria was concerned. Imelda hadn't said a word since they entered the building. Imelda turned, tears in her eyes, and hugged Gloria once more. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Better than a spot on the couch?" Gloria asked. "So much better," Imelda agreed. As they walked back to the house, Gloria said, "Now, tell me about this man." "Jeb Bingham!" Gloria exploded. "You could have knocked her over with a feather." Imelda had told Gloria about the encounter in the fresh market. It sounded wildly romantic. Imelda had told Gloria about the guardian angel who had taken care of her after Gloria had her arrested and sent to Camp Bouse. Gloria knew that Jeb drove the train from Fort Benjamin Harrison to the processing center. She had just never put two and two together. So Imelda and Jeb had a history, and she had invited him to dinner tonight. "Well, you've got my blessing," Gloria said. "It's just dinner," Imelda said, blushing furiously. "Uh-huh," Gloria said. She wasn't fooled. Jeb pushed back his chair, wiped his mouth with his napkin, and said, "Best meal I've had in a long time. Absolutely delicious. Thank you, Imelda." Gloria had been watching the two of them throughout dinner. Jeb had arrived in a dress shirt, jeans, and a sport coat, and had brought a bottle of wine. Gloria had only ever seen him in coveralls. Had she not been expecting him on the other side of the door, she may not have recognized him. Jeb was actually quite handsome. Imelda, too, looked amazing. She was wearing a new figure-flattering dress and did not have her hair up in the bun she had worn since the day Gloria had met her. Imelda's hair, surprisingly, went nearly to her waist, falling in soft, natural waves, and shone blue-black under the dining room light. Her brown eyes, enhanced by a light dusting of mauve shadow on the lids, exactly matching the color of her dress, sparkled whenever Jeb spoke to her. "Just dinner my foot," Gloria thought. Over dinner, the four made introductions and exchanged stories. Jeb told of his first encounter with Gloria, the Supreme General's personal liaison. She shared that she really did want to visit with him on the trip to Indiana, but had an image to project and knew the general would be asking his opinion of her, which he had. While she had come off as aloof, she had thought Jeb was nice. Next came the story of how Gloria and Imelda had met and their plan for Imelda to infiltrate Camp Bouse to encourage the saints there. That led to the story of how Imelda had met Jeb and his kindness to her on her way to Camp Bouse. They also talked about how Dylan came to be part of this group and about the switcheroo they'd pulled on Eric Greenbaugh with the earbuds. They shared the story of how Eric had Rob sent to Fort Savage and how Dylan stayed there and Rob became Gloria's new assistant. Finally, Jeb shared how he'd come to retire from the railroad and government job to become one of the resistance section leaders, orchestrating the raid on Fort Benjamin Harrison. By the time dinner was over, the four felt like they'd known each other forever. Each acknowledged that their paths crossing as they had could only have been orchestrated by God. "Did you save room for dessert?" Imelda asked, looking at Jeb. "I couldn't," Gloria said, patting her stomach. "Maybe if I hadn't had that second bowl of Pizzoli," Dylan lamented, shaking his head. "I made homemade fudge," Imelda said. "Fudge?" Jeb asked. "Yeah, I ate all yours last time. Figured I owed you." Dylan and Gloria locked eyes, prompting Gloria to say, "Imelda cooked. I've got the dishes. Want to help me, Dylan?" "Sure," he said, picking up the plates from the table. "Would you like to see my new apartment?" Imelda asked Jeb. "Love to," he said. She reached for his hand, grabbed the fudge with the other, and led him out the patio door and through the garden. By the time Jeb left for the night, Imelda had elicited an offer from him to paint her shack and take her shopping for curtains. But better yet, she had been given the perfect goodnight kiss. After dishes, Dylan went home and Gloria retired to her room to write a letter. Imelda had found some beautiful writing paper. It was a light lavender color with soft white lines and clumps of lavender flowers tied with purple bows around the edges. Gloria sat up in bed with pillows supporting her back, turned on the reading lights in the bookcase headboard, and began to write. "Dear General, I discovered your real name and will put it on the envelope, but you've always been and always will be General to me, so if you don't mind, that's how I will address you. I know you won't get these letters for a year, but I wanted you to know that I think about you constantly, and though you are certainly intended to feel that way, you are not alone. I rescued your cottage in Lawrence Township from foreclosure, and Imelda and I are living there. The garden was badly in need of weeding, but the roses were still in full bloom, and I have them in the vases on the island and in the bathroom. I know you loved your garden. I think of you every time I walk by and smell their sweet fragrance. I need to ask your forgiveness, General, for betraying you as I did. I still believe I was doing the right thing, even though it broke my heart to do so. Here's the funny thing about forgiveness, General. You don't forgive someone because they ask for it or because they deserve it. You forgive so you can let go of the bitterness that holding a grudge builds in your heart. Imelda escaped the guillotine at Camp Bouse, but many of my other friends didn't. I could hate you for that. But I forgive you, General. I forgive you because Jesus Christ forgives me for every wrong I have ever done. He will forgive you too if you will but ask him to. I intend to write to you every week, letters full of details of what is happening here on the outside, so you will know that life continues, so you won't feel so cut off and isolated. I pray the Lord will keep you strong and sane. Don't give up, General, because Jesus and I won't give up on you. All my love, Gloria. Gloria put the letter in an envelope and addressed it to Theodore Madison, ADX Florence, Colorado. She would take it to the bus station tomorrow. In recent years, everything had gone electronic. Bills were automatically debited from or paid with Freedom cards. There was no more written correspondence. In fact, Imelda had found Gloria's writing paper at the third antique store she'd visited in Indianapolis this morning. Post offices and stamps were a thing of the past. Because written communication was so scarce, the few things that did need to be delivered, mostly physical contracts and letters to inmates, were simply taken to the nearest bus station and given to the driver going nearest the recipient's address. Bicycle couriers used by the bus stations would take them from there to their final destinations. Since vehicles had become outlawed, there were plenty of buses and bicycles available, and the correspondence always got delivered. Gloria drifted off to sleep, confident that her words would not only find the general, but would find a way into his heart. JT was excited. He had an anonymous tip line that viewers could use whenever they heard or saw something they thought was newsworthy that they would like JT's crew to check out. He put the phone number on the screen during his Now News New America program once a month. Most of these tips went nowhere. Petty squabbles that someone wanted to settle, or a case of mistaken identity. This week, he'd sent reporters to Indiana and to Tucson to check on a particular lead, and it panned out. He had actual verified news that he would be sharing on this evening's program. Good evening, New America. This is J.T. Hadlock with all the now news in the nation. Nearly 2 months ago, the resistance led by our soon-to-be president, Samuel Adamson, set our loved ones free from the camps where they'd been detained. The government called our loved ones containees because they felt they were containing their problem. We now collectively call them the rescued. These, when arrested, were stripped of all their belongings, wallets, purses, jewelry, phones, even some clothing. They had nothing but the clothes on their back during their detention and had nothing but gratitude to be alive when they were rescued. On the screen, while he spoke, JT showed pictures of the hundreds of thousands at the camps on G-Day as they were being rescued. Masses of thin, tired, dirty people in raggedy clothing. Our gracious interim president, Speaker of the House, Wilma Lee, bought each of the rescued a change of clothing and a plane ticket home. Still, the rescued had very little with which to start life over. Not even a wallet. No money. Can you even imagine? But all that changes tomorrow. JT paused dramatically. He could imagine the viewer leaning toward their TVs. What? Why? How? They'd be asking. When he had held them as long as he dared, JT continued. Seemingly out of nowhere, a new foundation has arisen. GV Enterprises, doing business as Relief for the Rescued, office in doing business as Relief for the Rescued. Meet Dylan Williams, the manager of the new Relief for the Rescued office in Indianapolis, Indiana. JT put a clip on the screen of an interview his reporter conducted with Dylan earlier that week. Dylan's face appeared on the screen, and only the reporter's voice could be heard. Dylan, the interviewer began, what can you tell us about Relief for the Rescued? Dylan Williams had a handsome, boyish charm about him that immediately put people at ease. That came across the screen now as he answered. Our benefactor, who prefers to remain anonymous, has the heart and the means to help those who have been rescued get a fresh start now that they are home. The benefactor has purchased a building and yard in each Indianapolis and Tucson, Arizona, where beginning tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., those who have been rescued can come and receive 1,200 credits worth of Bitcoin absolutely free to get them going again. Bitcoin, the interviewer clarified, not Freedom Card credits? Why? And how does that work? Dylan gave the camera a calm, confident smile and responded, "We've seen how the Freedom Cards have been manipulated. They were shut off for any offense the government imagined was being committed. Bitcoin cannot be manipulated or controlled, not even by the government. It is an honest monetary system that is already widely in use among the resistance. Not only that, but Bitcoin is not taxable, not subject to inflation, and earns more Bitcoin as more users join the market." That's right. The universal basic income never changed. If you started with 1,200 credits and didn't use it, you'd still have 1,200 credits. If you leave Bitcoin alone and never used it, it would increase in value. Oh, it fluctuates with the market, goes up and down, but it always settles higher, so your money makes money. "Wow," the interviewer exclaimed. "How do I get a hold of this Bitcoin?" Dylan chuckled. "Anyone can buy it, and yes, you should. I can help you set it up after we finish this interview," he said with a wink. "When the rescued come into my office, I will help them set up a virtual wallet into which our benefactor has deposited 1,200 credits worth of Bitcoin. They will also get a list of Bitcoin vendors, people and businesses who currently take Bitcoin. It's not a lot, but it's a start. There were almost 500,000 people who were rescued from the camps," Dylan said, shaking his head. "Our benefactor is giving each one 1,200 credits in Bitcoin. That's $600 million being donated to help the rescued." "See, folks, there are still good people out there," the interviewer encouraged. "Where and when does all of this take place, Dylan?" he asked. A shot of a building with a sign above the door that said "Relief for the Rescued," surrounded a large fenced yard, came up on the screen. "This is our office at 940 West 16th Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. It opens tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and closes at 7 in the evening. We are open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 7, and will be taking the rescued on a first come, first served basis." "Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, anonymous benefactor," the interviewer said. "JT, back to you." The clip ended and JT said, "For the rescued living in the other half of the country, there is an office in Tucson, Arizona. Here's Rob Johansson to tell you where he's located." On the screen was a similar looking building and yard to the one in Indiana, with a man standing in front of it. "Hi," the man said. "I'm Rob Johansson, the manager of Relief for the Rescued in Tucson, Arizona. We are located at 4570 East Irvington Road. We will open at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning and close at 7 p.m. Open Monday through Saturday. First come, first served. We're excited to give our rescued the fresh start they deserve. See y'all tomorrow," he said with a wave, and the clip ended. JT began to wrap up his segment. "You heard it here, folks. Every rescued in the nation is being given a fresh start with free money by an anonymous benefactor. It truly is a new day in New America. For Now News New America, this is JT Hadlock. JT out." The next morning, Dylan was not surprised to find a line down the street and around the block when he arrived at the Relief for the Rescued building an hour before it was due to open. He ushered Richard through the employee entrance on the side of the building. When Gloria hired him to manage this foundation, Dillon determined that Richard Webster would be the first to benefit from it. Dillon had called Richard, then made the 3-hour drive yesterday afternoon to pick him up in Grove City, Ohio. Richard would stay with Dillon and help him at the foundation until Dillon's day off on Sunday, when he would drive him home. When the doors opened at 7 a.m., those who walked through them found a ticket dispenser directly in front of them with a sign requesting they take a number, then a seat to their left. A lobby was filled with 20 padded folding chairs. Benches would have accommodated more of the rescued at a time, but Gloria was afraid they would remind those they were trying to help of the benches at the processing center and opted for the chairs and comfort over productivity. Across the lobby, directly in front of the chairs, were 5 cubicles at which sat volunteers who called out numbers over microphones. Originally, the cubicles were designed with LED displays to show the next number where to go, but again, Gloria felt this was too reminiscent of Processing A and Processing B in the processing center, and went the way less traumatic. When called to a cubicle, the volunteer asked the rescued his or her name and the number written on their foreheads as they exited the train in Oklahoma City. This was the qualification for benefits. Anyone who had truly been rescued had carried that number on their person everywhere they went from the day they debarked the train until the day they were rescued. It had become their identity. They could rattle it off without hesitation. Anyone who couldn't was denied benefits. The volunteer typed the information into the computer, whose program would alert them if that number had already been entered. This signified someone who had made up a number and duplicated an actual one, or someone trying to get extra benefits. At this cubicle, it was also determined if those seeking benefits had obtained a cell phone after their rescue. Those who didn't were issued one. Cell phones were the device upon which the rescued would receive and access their Bitcoin. Cell phones in hand, they were next sent down a hallway to another lobby with padded folding chairs facing a TV on the wall. Here, a continuous loop played a video explaining Bitcoin, how it came to be, how it worked, and its benefits. There was a stack of papers listing Bitcoin vendors on a table near the door for them to take as they exited. When the rescued finished watching the video, they continued down the hall to some padded chairs lining the hallway outside a single office with an open door. Here they would wait until Dillon hollered, "Next!" Enter the office and sit in the chair facing the desk. Dillon walked the person seated in front of him through the process of opening a virtual wallet on their cell phone, and then he transferred the credits into the new wallet. He showed them how to send and receive Bitcoin from others, i.e., how to buy and sell. Finally, he handed them a voucher and asked them to exit the office through the rear door. The rear door led outside into a huge fenced yard full of hundreds of vehicles. There was an awning to their right as they exited Dillon's office, where more volunteers with clipboards sat. One approached the person who just entered the yard, asked for the voucher, which he clipped to his clipboard, then walked the person through row after row of vehicles. The volunteer explained that once Samuel Adamson became president, vehicles would be legal again, and part of their benefits was a vehicle of their choice. When the rescued found the right one for him, the volunteer wrote the number written in grease pencil on the windshield onto the voucher and erased the number from the glass. The voucher was then returned to the rescued to be brought back and exchanged for his vehicle after they were once again legal. Voucher in hand, the rescued were shown to a gate where they were able to exit the property. The whole process took about 30 minutes per person. In Tucson, the rescued in that part of the country went through the exact same procedure at the store Rob managed. At the end of the first day, 100 rescued at each location had received their benefits and a fresh start. It was the tiniest drop in the bucket, but to those who had received the benefits, it was everything. 100 at a time, a nation of rescued citizens began to feel human and vital again. Those who had received their benefits were no longer perceived as the rescued. They were simply members of society once more. And this is where we are going to stop with part 7 of And Then the Trumpet. You'll have to join us next time for part 8. There is still a lot to happen as we go on with the story. And don't forget, if you're enjoying it, please like and subscribe and share. And in this way, you can help me spread the word. Thank you, and God bless.